So, welcome back to another episode of the Mindset Athlete podcast. And today's guest, I've got Dre Baldwin. So, welcome onto the show, Dre.
I'm excited to be here, James. Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure. So, Dre, your premise is very much built on work on your game and the third day. Most people execute on the first day. Everybody has a good intention with starting a goal, so they have the motivation. You talk about why consistency, or having consistency without relying on motivation. So how do you get from people have no problem with day one, day two, but obviously to get to what we're talking about today with the third day?
But that whole concept actually came from my background in playing sports. I would always be in the gym and I was posting videos on YouTube. So players would see that I'm in the gym every day training, and they would ask, what keeps you coming to the gym every day? Because most athletes don't have a problem coming when they feel like it, when they're motivated, excited, or when their friends are there. But then those dog days when there's no motivation, there's no excitement, there's nobody else with you, and you really don't feel like going, most people just don't go. And this applies in basketball, but it applies in everything else as well. So when I would show up consistently doing those things, people would see that and ask, what moves you to do that? And that's when I came up with this concept, because everybody's excited on day one and day two. But on that third day, proverbially, it doesn't have to literally be 3 days. James, that's when you find out somebody's serious about something, because the welcome party is over. The newness has worn off. The novelty is gone. And all that's left is actual work. And what a lot of people don't understand is that whatever it is that you do professionally, and you're looking at somebody else's job, whether they're an athlete, a podcaster, an influencer, a model, many people look at certain lines of work and they assume that it's just this sexy, fun, exciting job every day. And the reality is no job is like that. Every job has a slog. Every job has dog days. Every job has the actual job in all capital letters. That's not fun, is not exciting, and you have to do it if you're going to work there. And people think that grass is greener, but even in the sports world, no, it's not. There are days we don't feel like working. So the third day is that day when you don't feel like going to work. But that's what separates the pros from the amateurs, is when you can show up and deliver as if it looks like you want to be there, even though you really don't. Like, people shouldn't be able to tell that that's the day you didn't feel like working. That's what the third day is about.
So what do you put it down to? It's discipline, not confidence. So what you're echoing there, Dre, of the third day is a byproduct of, obviously, you and I have been athletes. So we are very regimented in routine, and obviously discipline comes the byproduct, and by having that discipline breeds confidence. So when you say for the ordinary person, it's discipline, not confidence, what do you mean?
Well, most people want confidence, and most people need discipline. They'll admit they need discipline, but they want confidence. And the challenge with both of these is that, number one, most people look at these as personal attributes. Like, there's a confident person or a disciplined person, when really confidence and discipline are just descriptions of behaviors, not descriptions of the person. And also, people get it misconstrued where these come from. So as you already said there, confidence is a byproduct of discipline. Now, what is discipline a byproduct of? And most people, since they don't have an accurate answer to that question, that's why they don't have discipline, and therefore they can't get confidence, even though they know they need one, they want the other. So discipline is a byproduct of structure. When the proper structure is in place and a person simply follows the structure, and that's something as simple as following instructions consistently, then your behavior becomes discipline. You follow a system over and over again, your behavior is discipline. And because you've done the work, now you've earned the right to believe in your ability to do that thing. That's what we describe as confidence. So discipline is just following that structure with no interference consistently. Confidence is you having followed a structure consistently and then having no mental interference in terms of anxiety, stress, self-consciousness, thinking what everybody else is thinking about you. That's what confidence is. Confidence is not actually a performance or addition of things. It's actually a removal of the waste products that get in the way. Confidence is when you remove everything else, all that's left. So anyone who has a child can look at a 3-year-old child, they're fully confident, 100%, only until they get taught to not be confident. That's the additions. But they didn't learn anything to be confident. You come out that way. We just get taught to not be that. So this is where people usually get it messed up, even though they strive to be confident, they strive to be disciplined. They just go about it with what I call inaccurate formulas on how to get it. Or they'll copy the surface level traits of a person who is confident or disciplined, thinking that that's going to work for them. And it may look good for a moment or two or a day or three, but long term, that doesn't work because, again, the underlying foundation is not there.
Do you think as human beings then, Dre, and the byproduct of this is probably social media to a certain extent, but you talked about surface level, so we're talking about something that is systematic. So the somebody perceives a problem as being a problem, but it's for the person to be able to enact change long term, they have to look deeper than that to obviously take accountability of themselves to own up. The problem is not outside, it's you or I is the problem we're facing straight in the face. So it is more deep rooted than some people maybe are willing to changing that state altogether that Tony Robbins talks about.
Yeah, that's part of it. Absolutely. And the state determines what actions you may take in the moment and how you're feeling in the moment, the story you're telling yourself. But states change, right? You can feel really motivated at 9 o'clock, but not so much by 10 o'clock. The structure allows you to still perform the way you're supposed to at both times. So the states can change, energy can change, but execution doesn't have to change. Execution is not really based on how you feel. It's just based on your decision to follow the process, whatever that process may be. You do that often enough through repetition, then it gets programmed into the subconscious. It becomes a habit and it's something that you do unconsciously without thinking about it. That's really the level that you want to get at, to where you're executing without thinking, to where your feelings and emotions don't have a say in the decision-making process. Because when feelings and emotions have a say in the decision-making process, there's a good chance they're going to steer you in a direction that you don't really logically want to go, but emotion overpowers logic 7 days a week, twice on Sunday. So you don't want to let those come into play because that's going to slow you down and keep you from doing what you say you want to do, but you don't feel like doing. And if it comes to what you say versus what you feel is going to win.
Is that why the likes of Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant, is because they got so obsessed in the preparation, which obviously we're talking about systems? Is that why you believe they were successful? It was literally they would stop at nothing to cover every basis. So when the eventuality actually happened, obviously they've got nothing to worry about.
I think that is directionally correct, but I think that sensationalizes it a bit. And I know a lot of people who are fans of, especially somebody like Kobe, because he's the most current, most recent. People sensationalize and make that story sound more than it needs to be, to where it appears to be out of reach for the everyday person. And I'm a Kobe Bryant fan, but how Kobe Bryant was able to get the most out of himself is not something that's unreachable by other people. You might not be able to do it in basketball. Michael Jordan, Tony Robbins, whoever. It's identity level is really what it comes down to. And the reason why I say identity level is because every human being on the planet has an identity. You have a way that you see yourself, and the way that you see yourself in the mirror determines what you do and do not do. And what you do and do not do determines what you end up having. So it's being, doing, and having in that order. And most human beings, the mistake that most people make that they don't even know that they're making is they spend their lives in the doing, having loop. They never ask themselves about the being. They say, okay, I want this outcome. So to have this outcome, what do I need to do? They go to work and they go do stuff. And they do things. Do I have a result yet? No. Okay, let me do more stuff. Do I have a result yet? No. Let me do some different stuff. Do I have a result yet? No. Maybe I'm doing the wrong things. Let me just change everything I'm doing. And they spend their entire lives in that cycle, doing and trying to have. Then they go look up Kobe Bryant. They look up Michael Jordan, Tom Brady, or whoever your favorite entertainer, famous person, celebrity is. And what do you read when you read stories about guys like that? When you read a story about a Kobe Bryant, what's most of the story about? what he did. Kobe trained for 8 hours a day. Kobe took this many jump shots. Kobe did that. Kobe did that. And what do people do? They go copy what he did. But nobody asks the question, what was his identity? What is the identity that he had wired within himself that made his actions happen naturally? See, actions happen naturally because they flow from your identity. And scientifically, it's proven, psychologically, it's proven that a human being cannot perform in a way that is incongruent with the way that they see themselves for an extended period of time. So if you see yourself as one type of person, you can't perform differently than that identity for an extended period. You can fake it for a little while, as they say, fake it till you make it, which is not a real thing, because you can't fake it till you make it, because you can't fake long enough to make it. It won't last. It eventually expires, kind of like Cinderella when the clock strikes 12, that beautiful ball gown disappears. You go back to the robes, the rags. So the Kobe Bryant thing is about identity. Now, he tried to bridge the gap. He put out a book before he passed away called The Mamba Mentality. So now you hear people talking about the Mamba mentality. But when you hear people talk about the Mamba mentality, usually they're describing it by talking about what they did. But that's backwards. That's not how identity works. Identity is not things that you do. Identity is who you are, how you see yourself. And because you see yourself a certain way, the actions happen automatically. You don't have to think about the actions. And this is where people get mindset messed up. And this is the challenge with mindset, because it's intangible. You can't count, measure, or weigh mindset. You can count, measure, and weigh actions. That's why most people default to them. But the identity level is about, this is who I am as a person. And because of this, here are things that I absolutely always do without fail. And here are things that I will never do, regardless of the circumstance, because this is what I'm about and this is who I am. And to wrap up this answer, James, the biggest challenge for most people, especially today, I know you mentioned social media, is that a lot of people have too many slashes in their identity. And when I say slash, is that they're trying to be more than one thing at a time. If you look at, since we're talking about him, Kobe Bryant, there were no slashes in his identity. He had one identity, which is, I'm a dominant, great basketball player. I just dominate on the basketball court. He didn't do anything else. Kobe became a brand, but that wasn't, his focus was not being a brand. His focus was not getting endorsement deals. His focus wasn't social media. His focus was dominate on the basketball court. And if I do that, all the other things eventually came his way. Michael Jordan was the exact same way. Tom Brady is the same way. These days, a lot of people, they hedge their bet. I'm going to try to play basketball, but just in case that doesn't work, let me build a brand. Just in case that doesn't work, let me do this over here. That doesn't work, let me do this thing over here. And when you do that, you're not putting your full resources in anything. And when you don't put your full resources into any one thing, you can't possibly maximize your potential in that thing.
So it's a completely mentality shift then for most people, because you said that they do things backwards, which I found fascinating. To most people focus on the doing part, but from your experience, both personally and professionally, is that down to the natural environment that they're in, or the nurturing?
That's a combination of both. I mean, you look at all of Western society, everywhere from Western Europe all the way to the United States. What do we focus on? We focus on effort. All right, this is all about hard work, hustle culture. Wake up early, stay up late. I show up before everybody else shows up. Make a show out of that. How hard you're working. That's the nurture. That's what we're seeing around ourselves. And when you look at the celebrities, they go win an award. They win a Grammy award or an Emmy or an NBA MVP, and they give a speech. What's usually the first thing they do? They thank God, they thank their family, then they tell you how hard they worked. That's what they do. Tell you how hard they worked to become successful. Well, the reality is they're hard workers who don't succeed. So hard work can't possibly be the reason that the successful person is the most successful, because they're hard workers who have nowhere near their success. So it's something else that goes into the formula. It comes down to the identity level. It comes down to talent. It comes down to maybe some raw materials that this celebrity or superstar has that other people simply don't have. That's part of the equation. They don't mention that, because if they mention that, then it doesn't sound so sexy. Well, hey, I'm just more talented than you and I work hard. That's the truth. They don't tell you that part. And also, most people can't explain identity in the way that we're talking about it here, because they don't understand it. So they couldn't explain it to anybody else, because they couldn't explain it to themselves. So they put it in a way that is easily digestible by the average person. And hard work is easily digestible. Everybody understands going to work. People understand put in this many hours. So when some successful person, quote unquote, tells you that this is how I became successful, and they tell you all the stuff that they did, they're not lying. They're just not telling you the whole story, but they don't even know the whole story. So they're not really deceiving you. They're not trying to deceive you, but they are deceiving you because they don't know what they don't know. But then when we get into talking about what we're talking about here, how many people can digest this conversation and really understand it and go apply it? Not many. So you have to put it into a bite-sized enough pieces that people can get it. And that's what I try to do when I talk about identity is we got to break it down to where people really get it. And also the bigger piece to all of that is the person has to be ready to absorb it. Because a lot of people, they'll go through their lives trying things, doing, thinking that will succeed. Is only when they finally realize, okay, maybe I need to do something other than just do stuff and see if that works. That's when they're open to this conversation.
Well, that's the difficult one, isn't it? Because it takes enormous amount of bravery, courage to be open to having your identity scrutinized under a microscope. I think Zoom was a wonderful thing for it because ultimately I have to shut up and listen. And people went, how could you sit there and take the criticism? Yeah, but I've been brought up to if you ask for criticism, you can't then not take it back. You can't go, hang on, no, I don't like this because it's not negative. It's ultimately, I think this ties in very well. Is I'd seen something on social media of people look at a loss negatively, but the person did it as a metaphor for the athlete. In that mindset, we don't like losing, and that's obviously an identity that I'll never lose, and probably you'll never lose. But as in, we see it as a construct of it. It's going to teach me far more about myself, how I show up, my identity, my character, than winning ever will do.
Absolutely, because you mentioned Tony Robbins earlier. He says that when we win, we party, and when we lose, we ponder. As it makes you think when you take a loss, and you start to examine what went wrong, what could I have done better, what did I not see, what should I have known before this happened, and where do I need to improve? Because I may face that same situation again. How can I be positioned to win next time if I had to face that exact same circumstance? So we start to look into ourselves and find out what adjustments need to be made. And most people who have become successful, especially athletes, we can narrow the conversation down to that. There's no athlete who never took a loss. They might not lose in their official matches, but they've lost in practice. They've lost in training. And because they've taken those losses, for the most part, when they get into the main competitions, they're winning because they already prepared ahead of time. And the number one hallmark of a professional is preparation. I call it doing your homework. You've done your homework in the training. So when you get into the game, you've already seen every possible scenario. So you can adjust on the fly and do what needs to be done to win the game that day.
I think outside of the sporting arena, people have always found it perplexed as well. Why would you prepare yourself for an eventuality that you don't want to happen? It's like, well, it's more likely to happen than the perfection moment has never happened, even if you mentally prepare yourself for it. So I probably could never put into words as to why we do it, but I think it's covering every base because it's going to be somewhere in between. That if I've done everything in my power to prepare, that one thing I cannot control is another person, and especially if they're on the other team, I can only do my utmost through preparation to stop them to the best of my ability. And then beyond that, if they have an amazing game, so say Kobe Bryant's 81-point game, I'm assuming the people that defended him put in their best to stop it, and obviously they were on the wrong side of history. But did they not prepare as much as somebody that when he scored, I would say no.
Yeah, I agree. And in the live game, you have the opponent, you have the defense, and you don't know how they're going to adjust. Even the same opponent from game to game, they adjust. They don't show up the exact same way. So this is why you prepare ahead of time to deal with whatever situation may come up in front of you, and you don't know what it's going to be. So you train enough all your skills so that in the live event, number one, you can respond to whatever the opponent is doing, and number two, you don't have to think about what to do in the moment, because in a live sporting event, you don't have time to think about what to do, what move to make, what punch to throw, etc. You have to respond off of instinct. So your muscle memory has to be trained well enough that you don't need to think. And that's the purpose of the training. That's why the training needs to be difficult enough, that some people like to say game speed, so that you're ready to respond in a live game when someone does the same thing.
Why do you think some of the younger generation, they don't, and I'm generalizing, I'm not saying everybody does this, they don't treat practice or training at game speed. They think of it as two different entities, and then they perceive that they can just show up and play.
Well, a lot of athletes think that until they get into the game and realize that they can't show up and play. So sometimes they got to get slapped in the face by reality. Sometimes the athlete can be so good that the competition is not good enough to force them to have to do it. So it's only when they get to a certain level that they realize that that's the way that it goes. For other athletes, it could be just, especially now because we have cameras everywhere, the training is almost like a performance for people. So you can film your training and get the social validation from showing people your training without actually having to get into a live competition where you can be beat. So that's a part of it as well. And it's just human nature. Human nature is designed such that we conserve energy mentally and physically. So for someone to have that kind of like that switch flip to where they treat the training like I'm getting myself ready for a live competition where I don't know what's going to happen, those athletes who are willing to do that and have the talent to make it work, they are fewer and further between. Now, some athletes who are not that good, they kind of unconsciously realize, okay, I can't go through training because I might not even be on the team. Like, I have to earn my spot here. And then those who are a little bit better, who could kind of get away with it, they, as I said, they got to get slapped in the face with reality before they realize, hey, this is what I have to do. Or the last thing is they may not have enough live game experience to understand that what I'm doing in training is inadequate for what's going to happen in a live competition. So sometimes they just have to see it enough to realize, okay, my training has to step up to match what I'm seeing when I get into that live situation.
Hearing you think, Dre, how early on in your career did you see that for yourself, that you had to make that shift?
It's a good question. I would say probably at the high school level. High school, even going into college, is you practice one way and you're practicing against your teammates, and you know the plays that they're running and they know what you're doing. And sometimes you kind of go through the motions. They go through the motions against you because we all know what we're doing. But in a live game, nobody's going through the motions. They're actually trying to stop you. They don't want you to score any points. And then when you get in the game, if you're not used to it, you don't have that live game experience, then you don't understand the difference of stepping up the intensity. And even the best players, sometimes in practice, they may not treat every single second of practice like it's a live game, but they know how to up their intensity when the game happens. But if you don't have a lot of game experience, then it may shock you. It may surprise you when that happens. So that happened to me definitely in high school. I would get in the game and the intensity level was a lot higher. Things happen a lot quicker than they happened in practice. And you may need to stay in the game and kind of get beat a little bit so you can catch up to the speed. You can make the adjustment if you have the talent, but it depends on your hierarchy on the team. Because if you're not that high on the list on the depth chart, you get in the game and you kind of look deer in the headlights, and the coach might not let you stay in there long enough to realize what's happening. So if you're one of the stars, maybe he'll let you play through mistakes. But if you're not, well, you're right back on the bench and you're like, what just happened? It happened so fast. And now you're back on the bench watching.
What does that do to the individual's confidence? Because obviously it's two separate identities.
Right. Well, it depends. It depends on the person, because one person can take that and they can crash and burn. They can say, wow, I got in the game and I got my butt kicked, and man, I don't know if I can do this. Maybe I chose the wrong sport. Maybe I don't need to be on the team. And maybe they get buried on the bench and they don't play anymore. And when the season's over, that's it. It's over for them. Or they could be someone like myself. You get in the game and you see what happened, and then mentally you start making your adjustments. Okay, all right, now I see that these guys they're moving a lot faster. The defense does this. Or the coach is expecting this. Okay, next time I get in, I'll be ready. Now I see the pace that this thing moves at. Now I can train at a different pace. I can make different adjustments. I would even be thinking that when I was playing in high school and in college, I would be in the game and something would happen that I had not experienced in practice. And then I'm sitting on the bench because maybe a mistake got made or I got scored on or something happened. I'm on the bench and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I need to adjust my training here because I hadn't had anybody play defense like that before. Or this guy is way stronger than me. I guess I got to start lifting weights in the off season because I can't have that happen again. So I was already mentally, that's the way I would always think, is just reconstructing. Okay, what do I have to do different in my training based on what this guy just did in a live competition that I wasn't expecting? I did what I trained for, but then his response was something I hadn't trained for. So now let me add that in. So it's kind of just adding layers in. But you had to be resilient enough and mentally tough enough to take it as feedback and not a referendum on who you are as an athlete, because that could lead you to quitting.
But you see that a lot, though. I'll be vulnerable with yourself and the audience. But I had an identity crisis when I retired.
Right. And that's something that a lot of athletes or just people transitioning in general, whether it be athletes, another area you see that a lot in is the military. People who leave the military and transition back into civilian life because they're leaving not only the people they've been around, but also that highly structured environment. So for many athletes, it's figuring out who am I and what am I about now? What do I bring to the table societally now that I'm not the athlete anymore? Now that people don't know me for playing the sport or I'm no longer directly associated. I'm a former athlete, not a current athlete. Who am I now? What gets me into the room now? What makes my name matter? For me, it was a smoother transition simply because there was no guarantee from the beginning I was going to even have a career. So I was already thinking from the beginning, hey, this might not last. When I got my first chance, well, I might not get a second. I got the second, don't know if I'm gonna get a third. So I was always thinking about what's the next thing, because the next thing might be next month. So I was already building that next identity while I was still playing. So when I stopped playing, the thing that I ended up doing next, which is where I am now, I was already doing it. I wasn't starting it at day 1-0 with no momentum. Well, when I stopped playing, I already had it going. And there were people who were already starting to know me for the next phase while I was still in the previous phase. So my transition was different from the average athlete. And the funny thing, James, I tell people all the time, had I been a better athlete, then I would have had a harder transition. So the fact that I wasn't so good from the beginning made my career more bumpy, but it also helped my transition be more smooth because I was already thinking about it. But had I been Kobe Bryant's level, then I would have just focused on just being the athlete. I wouldn't have thought about the next level and I would have been starting at zero. So funny how things work out.
Yeah, but most people do the opposite. They do the Kobe Bryant one because I'm not saying this is a bad thing, because obviously we go back to what you're talking about with a 3-year-old of they have confidence and you don't want to squash people's dreams, because obviously society does that enough every day. But as in, people have these lofty expectations of going pro. I wouldn't diminish the success that you've had. You still went pro, but for whatever reason, people don't perceive that in the same way as the very top. It's like, well, if you get paid to do the sport that you're doing is a profession, no matter what level that is, you're still a professional athlete.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, definition is you get paid. Definition you get paid to do the thing. So when I was playing, like year by year, I had to get that next opportunity. I never had a guaranteed contract that went past the season that I was playing in. So that's the reason why I say I was always thinking about the next thing. But let's say when I came in, my career ended up being nearly a decade long. But let's say when I first came in, they said, well, Dre, we guarantee your career is going to go 10 years and here's the money you're going to make every year. And we guarantee it. I wouldn't have been thinking about other alternatives because I knew it was guaranteed. I mean, that's just human nature. But because it wasn't guaranteed, and there was no guarantee I was even going to get a look, let alone the playing opportunity, that's why I was looking towards the next thing. On top of the fact that even if they did guarantee it, most athletes are finished before they turn 30. And the ones who are able to last longer, they're done definitely before they turn 40. Most athletes are not, Kobe or LeBron or Tom Brady. So what are you going to do for the next other half of your life? Assuming you got a lot of years left, what else are you going to bring to the table? You're going to need some other skills, because how long you're not going to be playing anymore. Maybe you could become a trainer or a coach, but those are skills. Trainers have to go get clients. Coaches have to have jobs, and they have to manage people. You got to work with other people, your coaching staff, your players, etc. So all of that is part of the deal. Once you stop playing, there are other skills that must be developed. And you had to mentally, like we talked about identity earlier, mentally close the door on the playing version of you and then open the door to this new version of you.
Well, that is the challenge for a lot of people, is that self-sabotage, self-doubt phase, because ultimately, yeah, you want this when you are open to that new identity coming through the door, as you put it, it's human nature to push that back to your brain to safeguard its safety of no, we don't want to let go of what we're comfortable with. This identity suits us. This new thing that you're bringing to the table, well, there's not too much uncertainty. Obviously, looking from a negative perspective, it'd be uncertainty, but that should excite you as well, because if you put on that hat of dreaming again, if I shoot for the stars, I'm going to hit the moon. So that there is a different way of looking at it, but you get caught up in that web of your own deceit, so to speak, to that you kind of going, well, if things don't, and this obviously plays back to what you mentioned with systems, as you're able to deconstruct that. If I'm following the steps that I need to, I can look at it from a bird's eye perspective, even though I'm in the trenches, to kind of going, I'm moving in the right direction. It might not be moving as fast as I'd like, but it's still moving.
Yes, and it's about going in the right direction, even if you're going slowly, than going in the wrong direction fast. And a lot of people have a challenge with that, especially if you've ever gone in the direction you wanted to and you were going fast. You're conditioned to move fast. So when things are not moving fast and they're moving slowly, you may be thinking, well, am I losing time here? Am I losing ground? Am I not keeping up? Maybe I'm doing the wrong thing because I'm not getting the return as quickly as I have expected or what I've been conditioned for. And a lot of people don't have the discipline to sit in that boredom or that nothingness or that quiet period that it takes to build up, to allow the work to compound, to allow the message to compound, especially when you're shifting your identity. You think of an athlete who played at the pro level, athlete probably has 20 years in being an athlete, 20 years of identity behind it. Now you decided today, this week, now you're going to move into something else. So you have 1 week versus 20 years. So it's not going to change that quickly. So it's getting that identity, to allowing that identity time to bake in, space to become what you're going to become. Then over time, slowly doing the actions that allow you to see yourself differently. Then eventually the world starts to see you differently. You got to see yourself different first before the world gets the message. And when you have all those years of being a certain type of person, there are people who are going to have that snapshot in their head of who you were then, and they're always going to see you as that type of person. Like, to this day, I'm sure you go to the grocery store or somebody sees you in the street and they remember you from playing. And that's what they know. They remember you as that. And people see me. They remember me from the basketball days. I haven't picked up basketball in 10 years, but last week I'm at the park. This guy asked me, do you still play? No, I have not played in a long time. But that's what they see. But that doesn't make me say, oh, let me go pick up the ball again, because that's what people expect. Well, that's what they expect. That has nothing to do with the standards that I've set for myself.
Well, I think you put it magnificently there, Dre, in terms of, I've never thought about it from that perspective of the time you've spent, I can see why there's friction with that as a human being, because for most, I'm maybe a bit lucky because I've had a disability, so I do probably have identity shifts. If I was honest, it took a number of years to be comfortable. Everybody's gone through high school. You're trying to fit in, so that's probably where the dilemma comes into play as well. I have to be a certain avatar or character in this environment, whereas I think as an adult, not so much. I think obviously social media had betrayed it as, polished perfection. Even the greats in sport have had they've all, well, we talked about Michael Jordan. He reminds people, how many shots did I miss? How many game winners did I miss? But because of the allure of storytelling, we glorify that success moment and kind of going, well, he made this. Yeah, but in order for somebody to have the confidence and the cojones to do that, because there's a lot of pressure to take the game winning shot. It's something that you would repeat over and over again in practice or in training, but you can't replicate the level of expectation and the pressure in that moment. The Knicks hadn't won a title in 50 years. You can't replicate that in practice, no matter what you do. So the point that I'm making is, I'll probably come away from this conversation you and I have had and let it soak in. And who's to say in a day's time, obviously it's going to have a massive impact in a year's time, because you've made me think differently on certain topics. They're kind of going, okay, I don't agree with Dre on that, or I've come into the conversation of, this has been my stance, this is yours. Oh yeah, he's thrown a curveball there. I like the direction going over here now, like completely. So it's having that structure and fluidity. It's not binary. You have to do it for you. Everything else now is outside noise. It's poignant because obviously we're talking about athletics. People that have played sport should be very, very good at this, to tune out the outside noise. But because we've left the arena, we forget about that skill set. We can tune out the booing, the jeering. Once upon a time, but that's still a skill set that you can utilize in the modern sense of social media, things that you need to say no to and things like that. So ultimately, if it's not, as you put it, pointing you in the direction that you want to go to, it's outside noise. So, and ultimately the choice is yours.
Yeah, it's an interesting way of looking at it. I hadn't thought about it as shutting out the outside noise, because I mean, if you play a sport, generally you have fans. I mean, you're going to have some people who don't like you, but generally you have fans. You stop playing, most of the people who remember you are people who liked you, right? They liked you when you were a player. And the commentary from those people may always see you as the player. So that can be the noise when you're trying to shift your identity into something else. That part makes sense. In my experience, and I'm just thinking about athletes who I've known of, a lot of them go into something that's sport related. So they'll become trainers or coaches. Damn near half of them do that, maybe more than half. And then others will go into something else that may be completely unrelated from their sport, or they'll take pieces from their athletics and bring it into the next thing, which is generally what I do, and you as well. So, and then you have people who do something completely different. They'll go into finance or venture capital or something like that. But I don't necessarily consider it noise that I go to the park with my son and somebody sees me and remembers me as a basketball player. I don't mind it. I mean, they're not lying. I was a basketball player, and I don't mind them recognizing it. It's okay. Here's what I'm doing now. And I took all the stuff that I learned over there, and here's how it's useful over here. Some parts I got to leave there. It's nothing about dribbling a basketball that applies if I'm going to give a speech, but a lot of it, showing up every day, dealing with teams, leadership, dealing with competition, showing up and doing your job, being confident, mental toughness, dealing with losses, preparing ahead of time. All that stuff is necessary in the professional world with whoever I'm working with or talking to. And any athlete from any sport, that applies in any business. So a lot of the stuff that we take from sports is very useful in the next thing. And I'm thinking about this now as we're talking, as I'm talking through it, I'm thinking about it, that I think with many athletes, when they stay very close, they get to use, let's say, 95% of what they got from the sport in their training and in their coaching, because they're right there basically doing this. They're in the same arena. They just move seats. I'm not the player anymore. I'm the coach. I just move up on the bench, or a trainer or an analyst. They just move to a seat over there. Now, if you decide to go into venture capital, well, there are some things you can take from the sporting experience, but you might only be able to take half. So the other half, you just have to leave. You can only use half. And now you have to develop that other half. You have to develop a whole new skill set. So I don't want to say it that it makes it better or worse, the athlete who decides to take only half versus the athlete who takes 95%. I think it's just a strategic decision, because if I didn't want to develop a whole new skill set, I could just stay in the basketball space. Let me just open up a training business. I could open a training business the day I stopped playing. I had 100 clients because I had fans. I had an audience. I was established. I was known. I'm the guy who shows up every day. Well, that's exactly what they want from a trainer. Obviously, I know what I'm doing. Mm-hmm. Now, if I decide to go into a completely different space, now I'm saying I'm going to drop 75% of what I got from sports. I'm going to bring 25, but now I only have 25% of what's needed in this new industry. I had to develop that other 75%. So basically, I'm sending myself back to school. I'm starting back at zero, and I want to learn from zero these new skills that I need in this new space. And I'm willing to be a student all over again in this new thing that I'm doing. Now, I may be able to accelerate my learning curve because of who I am. I probably know some people. They know who I am. They know my credibility. Maybe I can get the information sooner. I can get some people who are willing to invest in me because of who I am, because of my background. I can use that as a passport, or maybe not. Maybe I'm starting really at zero. I'm starting a brand new career at 35 years old doing something brand new. So it's just a matter of strategically, how does somebody want to operate their lives? And also, the last piece I'll say to this is who they see themselves as. Come right back to that identity point. Do you see yourself as a lifer in the sport? I never saw myself as a lifer in basketball, even while I was playing. I remember somebody interviewed me probably 10, 15 years ago. He wrote a blog post on his website. He said, interviewing basketball lifer Dre Baldwin. I'm like, I'm not a basketball lifer. Wait till you see what happens when I stop playing. Because I knew I was going to get completely out of there. But he saw me as a lifer because of what he knew. What he knew was, this guy kept grinding and working on his game, and he made it overseas, and here he is playing. So that's what he saw. But I didn't let what he had to say, and I didn't take it as a negative, but I didn't take his version of my identity and say, well, I need to live up to that. He just knew what he knew. But I've never had that problem of thinking of what other people think of me is something that I need to live up to. I've always understood that to have authority, you have to be an author. And what is an author? An author is a person who writes their own story.
So what for you, Dre, out of curiosity, what has been the overriding driving force for you all along? Is that impact?
Yeah, I think that's right. Impact not only on other people. First thing, I was trying to make impact for myself. I was trying to make myself matter, because when you're a student in school, I mean, you think you know things, but you got to go out into the real world and prove something. So in the sports world, I tried to prove something. Then in the influencer, quote unquote, space, before we were calling it that, I was proving things for myself. And then in business, proving things. But one thing you learn pretty early in business and in sports, is that the only way you really make an impact is that you have to do something that impacts other people. Even if you're trying to help yourself, it doesn't matter. Actually, you can't help yourself unless you do something to help somebody else. Because how do you help yourself? By getting attention, making money, getting thanks, getting appreciation. But you don't get any of that stuff unless you do something that matters to somebody else. So even if you're not trying to help other people, you have to in order to help yourself. It's impossible to get one without doing the other.
Well, that's a shift to a certain extent in philosophy for a lot of athletes. Okay, team sport, maybe not so much, but as in, if we look in real terms, you would have got into sport in the very beginning because of the love for it. Pretty much your social circle would have been something similar. So it's only natural. But I think you mentioned motivation, the motivational cues, and I've been asked about it. What's like the driving force behind climbing up the ladder in a sporting sense? But I couldn't really answer it, because what it really is the driving force is okay, it's familial pride and things like that, and putting your town on the map. If I was being honest, that's probably not true. I did it
exactly.
because I wanted to do
For
it.
yourself.
But
Yeah.
I think when you move into this space, it's very humbling. Doesn't matter what I want. Ultimately, if I don't help anybody else, which is at the root cause of, well, what should be good about humanity, is you should be wanting to help you should want to do something of kindness. It's not necessarily what I can get out of you or vice versa. Okay, there is obviously ulterior motive with some things, but in most things, when they're sincere, the sky's the limit in terms of where it can go. Showcasing to the ordinary person in the street is you are no different from those superstars. Ultimately, they have structures, routines, discipline, execution. You don't need an external force to motivate you, because obviously that's only going to serve short term. And it's taking that accountability to. That's why I asked, was yours impact? Because ultimately, the why is a very powerful thing, and obviously I've asked that of people in the past, and they can't answer it. But that is something that is not surface level. It takes a lot of deep thinking to be able to go, okay, I need to sit with this question, think hard and long as to why am I doing it? Because ultimately that's going to be a massive driving factor on, like you said, with your third day. That's the hard one. It's a nice smack in the face as to, okay, James, this is why you're doing it. Get on with it.
Yes, I agree. And that, I mean, even when you think about business, because even playing the sport is a business, and business is an exchange of resources between people. And usually one resource is money, and the other side, it's some product or service. So that's what it is. So people are willing to exchange their money for something that you're doing or creating or giving that they value more than they value the money. That's the reason why they're willing to pay for the ticket. I'll give them $100 for the ticket because this event is worth more than $100, or a book or a course or anything that they're signing up for. So you're making the impact because people get the value from the experience of the thing that they paid for, watched, downloaded, subscribed to, enjoyed, etc. So again, the only way a person can make themselves matter socially is you have to do something that another human being appreciates, and then they share that they appreciate it. Then somebody else hears about it. Then the next person hears about it. Then more people hear about it. So the famous person, they just have a multiplier effect of that. A person who is less famous, but they still make impact, they may do it one person at a time. They have to actually shake every hand, but you can shake a lot of hands if you do it consistently. Whereas if you're Kobe Bryant, you're on TV, now you can reach 1 million people who you will never meet. But both people are making the impact one way or another. That doesn't necessarily say that's their goal. Maybe it's just what happens. So for me, it's been about making an impact as soon as I saw the internet. So as soon as I saw there's a way I can take what I'm thinking and my ability to explain it, and I can put it out to the world, and there are people out there who want to hear it. I was doing it intentionally once I found that there was an avenue for it. Now, had I been world famous, maybe it would have happened without me being so conscious about it, conscious and intentional about it. But I wasn't. I was micro famous, not macro famous. So I was able to kind of make it happen, but doing it one at a time, but with a little bit of a multiplier effect, but not the international fame multiplier.
Yeah, but then if you look at it from, you have living experience, so you're able to showcase, if you're willing to. Obviously, that's the big if. The vulnerability of showcasing to others, I've trodden the path that you're on, and this is the steps that I took, and what I'm trying to showcase you through impact is you don't necessarily have to dig where I've dug, in order to get the same success. And
Correct.
that's where I challenged when it was put out there by Dean Grationi. That I watched a training that Tony Robbins and him delivered, and obviously it was of great value. But it got me to think on the spot as well. I've never done that. I've never dug where somebody else has dug, but that's obviously that works for me. I'm not saying it's going to work for somebody else, but to showcase to other people, I would never tell somebody to do something unless I've done it myself, to be able to kind of going, well, I'm not telling you this is the right way of doing something. I'm showcasing this is where the success is, this is where the in-between is, and this is where the failures has been for me. So I'm able to, when you have some of those same scenarios occur, I'm prepared to be able to help you because I've already been there. I think it comes back to what you say, Dre, with identity. It is that willingness, however big or small, to sit with that silence, to kind of going, okay, that's something. I could be honest with you, I wasn't prepared. I retired on my terms, but I wasn't prepared for the next stage in my life. And look, it's not a regret now because I learned the hard way, and I've obviously managed to rewrite it. But if I could do things again, which I can't, I would have probably gone into your camp too. This is what I envision for myself in the future.
Right.
But I think it's that stubbornness a little bit from the athletic minded to kind of going, well, no, this is my trajectory, this is what I want, this is the future. I think until another individual puts into question, yeah, but what happens if you get injured? What happens if you had a catastrophic? Okay, nobody wants to think about that. But that's a possible eventuality for everybody. The sport is a business, the athlete is a commodity, and you are disposable. But it's trying to showcase that to younger athletes. You would never leave college then, because it's secure, and you might make more money there than you ever do in the pros.
Technically, yes. What people do need to understand, the average NIL deal is not that much money. We hear about the ones on TV, but most of them are not, I can retire money or anything like that. That's only a few and far between. But to answer a few of the things that you said there is, number one, I am really analytical and looking at these kind of things. So when you take someone like yourself or any athlete who's had a career, and it's not necessarily that you can extract from your career and tell someone who doesn't play sports, these are the right things to do. But first, we had to back up. Let's go upstream here. What does the right thing mean? We got to get clear on what this person is trying to achieve. Is this person trying to learn how to show up every day, even when you don't feel like showing up? Well, you can teach them that. That would be the right thing to do. So your job as the athlete would be to deconstruct how you were able to do that for yourself and the principal elements of it, not related to sport. And then can you package and articulate those in a way that a person who's never picked up a ball or played a sport can understand? All right, that's my superpower. That's what I do best, is take something I understand, break it down, and I can give it to somebody else in a way that they can get it and they can use it. That's what I did in sport. That's what I do now in business, mindset, identity, all these things that we talk about. And there was something else that you said there that is escaping me. I'll have to come back to it. But overall, it's really about just having that understanding of what can you extract from your experiences and give to somebody else in a way that they can use it productively and usefully to where it becomes a valuable thing.
Obviously, this episode has just flown by, so it shows that it's been very insightful. And this is a question I asked of every guest. Normally, I would ask, if you got to sit down with any athlete, dead or alive for that matter, who would that be? But I'm going to tweak it a little bit to tie into your third day. What is one specific element of your third day that the average person listening today or whenever in the future could steal to put into their own morning routine? What would be your observation of that individual, the athlete dead or alive? How they engineered their own consistency on their third day?
First thing that comes to my mind is motivation is for amateurs. Motivation is not something that you need at all. It's nice to have if it shows up, but if it doesn't show up, you still have to do your job. You are better off operating with discipline, because discipline is not attached to an emotion or a feeling. Discipline is the execution of structure, and it operates every day. Just like the United States Postal Service, rain, sleet, snow, or hail, it still shows up and delivers the mail. That's your job as a professional. Professional must show up consistently, whether you're motivated or not. And well, the athlete I would pick would be Michael Jordan. And how did they engineer their own consistency? It's back to what we spoke about earlier, which is identity. It is not a matter of activity, it's identity, because he saw, and I've studied Michael Jordan. I've read every book written by or about him, and he engineered an identity that led to a natural flowing of behavior. Most people focus on his behavior. So I'm sure you saw the documentary that they put out a couple years ago, and everything was about, well, I practiced this hard, and he was a jerk to his teammates, and he pushed them, and they all played great, and he won all the championships. That's the actions. But what is not talked about in that documentary, at least not much, it is alluded to, but it's not dove into, because nobody who worked in that documentary could explain it. And I don't think Michael Jordan could even explain it. Is the identity level that he operated from is why he did what he did. See, a lot of people try to copy the actions. Well, I heard he practiced this much, he took this many shots, his game was like this. There's been 1,000 basketball players since Michael Jordan. The reason he hasn't been replicated is not because no one has the physical tools to do what he did. I would argue there are players who had more physical tools than him since then. The difference is he had an identity that didn't allow him to operate anywhere below a certain standard. And that's why he was who he was. His standards were very high. It wasn't his ceiling was high. His standard was high. Standard is the floor. Most people focus on the ceiling, the goal, when the real way to level up your performance is to raise the floor, the minimum accepted performance. His minimum accepted performance was so high that even after he beat everybody, he kept beating everybody because his standard required him to do so. And that's why he was who he was. And it's also why his teammates, none of them played better without him than they played with him, because he raised their standard just by osmosis, just by being around him. You had to perform at a certain level. It's not because he threw these amazing passes or because he made every shot. It's because he forced you to get to his level, because if you didn't, he would destroy you mentally in a way that you wanted to avoid. And all humans operate off of incentives and consequences. He offered them a consequence. If you don't perform at this level, I'm going to make your life hell. So they had no choice. But as soon as that pressure was off, they regressed back to their normal selves.
So on that note, before we finish, in relation to that last question I asked you, you are giving away the execution reliability scorecard. And that's where obviously everybody can go away and view their own terms at their own time. And that will be linked in the show notes for people to go and access. So Dre, thank you very much for coming on, sharing your wisdom and your impact on today's show. I've massively appreciated it and thoroughly enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Well, James, I appreciate you sharing your platform. I appreciate the opportunity and hope the audience got a lot from it.